Welcome to A Lit Passage, Conversations in Reading and Living. I'm James Bubar, and if you're new to the channel, please do remember to subscribe. Your support really helps us grow our channel. We're a new channel, and we very much appreciate the time you spend with us and your support. Tonight, I'm almost so excited I can't get through the introduction. I'm really excited to be joined from London. It's an evening here in Izmir. So thank you, Liviu, for postponing or maybe having maybe another dinner later for this time with us. I'm really thrilled you're here, and I can't wait to start
Thank
talking to you
you.
about all your work and how you got there. And I think it's really pressing. Anyways, let's get to the introductions. So I'm really excited, as I mentioned, to be joined by Liviu Babitz, who is the co-founder and CEO of Cyborgnest. He has over 10 years of experience in creating cutting-edge technology to impact humanity in the fields of human rights and human enhancement. One of the things I really admire about you is so much when I'm reading or listening to you talk about technology, you're talking about something that is done with us as opposed to us. So I'm
Of
really,
course.
really that's sometimes that's kind of a different position sometimes when you talk about technology. Anyway, Cybernest invests in humans, not machines, and strives to develop innovative technologies that expand our perception of the world. By creating sensory enhancement devices, we open up human experience to include the hidden parts of nature, which are thus far untapped by our natural senses. Cybernest aims to create technology that makes us more human. Lord knows we need that, connecting us to the planet and to each other. While others invest in developing machines, I think this is so important. While others invest in developing machines, we dedicate our research to exploring human evolution, investing in humans, not devices. Liviu is also the Chief Innovation Officer at Sensei, a Danish mental wellness company, helping people to manage stress and anxiety by using AI to interface with emotions through personalized haptic biofeedback. So, Liviu, thank you again for spending some time with us. You must be so busy right now with this.
It's a big pleasure. But the thing is that many times I feel like like a monk with a new religion. So I don't mind if I speak to two people in a corner street or to 5,000 people in a conference room. I'm as excited and as passionate and as happy to try to influence and to try to say what we have to say, because I think it's important. So thank you for having me here, and it's a pleasure having this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. When you had mentioned about the importance, I think if we had this discussion a year ago, it would be important, of course, and especially as you're going into human rights and essentially recognizing each human's creativity and wanting to expand that, or even quality of life or fulfillment of the lived experience, so to speak. But now it seems that it's even more urgent or more intense because, on the one hand, when I'm reading about your work, I feel like I'm in a science fiction novel. But then again, I guess that's normal because right now I feel like everyone feels like they're in a kind of post-apocalyptic setting. So I know we're going to get into your work and get into your experience now, especially with the collision of kind of hyper technology connectivity that we're experiencing day to day. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your path, because you are at this cross section of AI, computer science, psychology, wellness, data sciences, physiology, neuroscience. I'm just wondering how one arrives there. I'm sure it wasn't straight.
No, it wasn't straight, and yeah, thank you for the kind introduction. First of all, it's yeah, I'm flattered. I think, listen, it all we all have a package, right? That we are born with, and we it's like our secret case, let's say, that we take stuff out of there each time, and we use if we want or not, or So I was born in Romania in the 80s, and in
Interesting.
Romania in the 80s, it was as bad as is today in in North Korea. It's a situation where there was no in and out. There was a dictator. There were no products or no news coming out of anywhere. We had 4 hours of TV per day from 6 to 10, and it was all about the great leader and all that. And it looked like we had to wear certain uniforms and to sing different songs at school every day, and there was fear on the streets that you're not allowed to say this, you're not allowed to say that, because people were disappearing and they were being killed and jailed and whatever. So that's the place that you are born in, and you don't choose that. So that's your reality. And then 1989 came, and I was 9 years old. And then the revolution started in Eastern Europe. And then you see this, a person, two people, 10,000 people, 500,000 people suddenly on the streets, and the army is shooting at them, and there is a whole chaos. And we were in Bucharest because that's where I was born. And and then suddenly it happens, and that wall suddenly smashes into pieces in front of your eyes. And and then you say, okay, so you look at it as yes, we won, and there is victory, and there is all that. And you realize the power that everybody has, and doesn't matter in which circumstances you are. And then we were supposed to move to Israel before the revolution, and my parents decided after the revolution to stay in Romania, and because there was the revolution and everything's going to change. But then they realized, and they were so smart, but they realized in few months that it's probably going to take like 30, 40, 50 years until things are going to change. So eventually we did move to Israel. And there, Israel, I grew up in Israel, and I had an amazing childhood with amazing friends, and I'm really, really blessed with really amazing family, and especially parents that were so supportive and worked really hard. And so, yeah, in Israel, it's also not I wouldn't call it a normal place, because every place has its own craziness, but there are some issues there. It's a country that is built on a population that came from the Holocaust, and part of my family died in the Holocaust, and then suddenly you live there, and all the things with the neighbors, with the Arab countries, and all that. So it's a very tense situation as well. So you move from one um, type of reality that was very intense into another reality that is very intense as well. And that's the world that you grow up into. And then in the 90s, when I was already a teenager, technology started to become, let's say, available to the public, I would call it. And that's basically the spread of the internet. That was the thing. And Israel, it's a super high-tech country. So I had internet when I was, I think it was 93 or 94 that I already had internet at home. And when I was like 14 years old, I had my first cellular phone. So it was all there, and it was all fine, and I enjoyed it. But there was always that question of what's the power of it, and how can we use it. Not only, of course, having fun with it, it's an important part as well. I don't know, watching stuff, playing games, and all that. But what's the essence behind it? And I remember that for years I debated, what should I go and study? Should I be a developer? Should I be an engineer? Should I be? I really wanted to be an architect, and all my life I moved between I mean, I have big love to math and numbers, and I also have huge love to art and creation, which for many years people didn't understand, like, what the hell are you talking about? Because these things are so different. But for me,
Right.
it was almost the same thing, you know, discovering artists like Escher and others that, you know, that was the same thing. So yeah, and then at some stage I went studying statistics and economics at the university, and I felt that this is knowledge, and it's not something that it's not what I dreamt of. It wasn't the dream of the big studies and the big school, and, you know, like, being there, because I saw university as a place that you go to and you're like, ah, it's so exciting and it's
Yeah.
so cool, and then you find yourself basically in a classroom of grown-ups, you know, that was exactly like in school, with a teacher that is telling you. And I will never forget my first class at the uni. There was this super nice lecturer, professor, and he had this Madonna with a speaker connected to his belt. And the guy, for an hour and a half, he was like, you know, the Energizer bunny running all
Wow.
over, and he was so entertaining and so cool and so nice, and he spoke so nicely. But then when the lecture ended, and without offending anybody, I was like, you were so nice and so interesting, but all this time that I sat here, except getting to know your personality, which was fascinating, I've basically wasted my time,
Wow.
because everything that you taught me in an hour and a half, I could have hoovered from the internet in 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and to use the rest of the time to learn more. So in the same time, I could have learned 10 times more than you taught me. So that was a thing. So it's to cut a long story short, at some stage I decided to leave, and then I went studying cinema, because again I was trying to find something that is in the middle between something that is technical, mathematical, precise, but also has a creativity into it.
Hmm.
And I went studying cinema, and I won some awards at school, and that went really well. But I dropped from there as well, because after 2 years, at the end of year two, I won like the Dean Award of the college, and that was my last day at that school, because
Wow.
after that I said, okay, but what now? Like, that's very slow. I faster. Let's move. So I decided to go and do movies, and do documentaries, and I've done two documentaries, and during one of them, I interviewed a person, um, and when I came back, one of these stories, when he told me during the interview, listen, I know a guy that is doing something cool, and he's doing something with technology and human rights, but I can't tell you anything about it. So I dropped it, and then I came back home and I started editing the materials, and there was a serious sound problem in the materials that I recorded with him. So I had to go back and record the guy again. And I said, "Listen, Nitzan, if I'm already here now, again, you have to tell me what you couldn't tell me the last time, because you know, it just happened. So, you know,
Yeah.
like, let's go with it." So he said, I'll make an intro, and he introduced me to this guy called Oren Yakubovich that started an organization called Videre Skredere, that at that stage they just incorporated it. It's a UK-based charity, that non-profit that exists up until today. And I met Oren, and I said, okay, so what's your guys' story? What are you guys doing? And he said, we want to use technology, hidden technology, to expose human rights violations from places where there is no information coming out of.
Wow.
And when I heard that, I was like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for,
Yeah.
because that's the place where, all these
Hmm.
technology and knowledge and all that, and needs to happen. And I called him and I said, listen, I'm there is no one in the world that can do that work. I have to do that, and that's I'm hiring myself to your organization. And then he laughed at me, and then I invited him to see a movie that I did. And then at the end of the movie, he said, "That's the worst movie I've ever seen, and you know nothing, and you're a disaster, and it's not gonna work." And I continued nudging him. And again, to jump a bit forward, I ended up being the COO of this organization, and I basically worked undercover for 5 years around the world, recruiting, training, and running undercover networks of people that are using technology to expose human rights violations from places where no one else has access to. So many people in the world know me by many names and different stories. So that was absolutely amazing, because we live in a world where we think that because of the internet we know everything, because everything that Trump said before he even finished the sentence, it's all over there and
Right.
everybody knows. So
Right.
you live in this fear where you're like, yeah, it's all around me. But there are still so many places or bubbles in the world, being those countries or
Yeah.
territories or whatever, where there is someone that is making sure that there is absolutely no information coming
Right.
out of there.
Hmm.
So everybody who watches this recording, you all saw materials that we obtained from different places. It was never published as Videre doing this work, because, yeah, for the sake of security of everybody, of us, but mostly the activists on the ground that are doing the work itself. Uh, so I've done that for 5 years, which was very hard. Physically, I was almost, I don't know, 3 weeks out of every month I was away from home. But it was also extremely draining, mentally and psychologically, dealing with working with different situations and hard environments. Um, so the moment the organization was really standing on its feet and things became really successful, I was just at that level where I was, okay, I need a break, I need something else, I need a change. So I left, and then we moved to London. By then, my son was born, Julian, and we moved to London. And so that was my first impact experience with technology. And I saw how technology is so powerful, and has such immense impact on can have immense impact on what we do. uh, and that was from a from a human rights perspective. uh, then we moved to London, and I have a friend that one of his friends is a guy called Neil Harbison, and he is the first guy recognized as a cyborg by any government in the world. And Neil is a great dude and an inspiration, and he has this antenna implanted on his skull that helps him hear colors. He was born having this very rare condition that he can't see any color. So when people say color blind, usually you can't see a color or
Right.
something, but he sees completely black and white and shades of gray.
Wow.
Which is really rare. So, being an artist, he invented this antenna that is physically connected to his skull, coming from here to here. And then at the top of it, it has an antenna a camera that basically translates colors in front of the antenna into sounds, into vibrations that then are basically played on his skull. And by that, he learned to differentiate different colors. So now I'm sitting and having a lunch with a guy that has an antenna on his car connected to him. So obviously my whole interest or focus was on the fact that, hey, there is a dude with an antenna just having lunch with you on his head. So you are let's say magnetized to the physical aspect of it. But then I went home, and it didn't leave me, and it didn't leave me. But what did happen is that after a few days, the physical aspect of it kind of faded away, and I started thinking about what's the actual meaning of what he does. And then a coin dropped, and then I was like, wait, so basically everything that we ever thought, created, or felt started from a sensory input. Because if you think about it, if I take away all of your guys' senses one by one, right, you will have no option anymore to get any kind of information into your brain except information that comes from internally from your bodies, which can be limited into pain or you being like tickled or scratched, right? Things that have to do with your skin sensitivity. So that or your heartbeat that you sometimes feel, right? So those are the only three types of information that your brain will get that you are conscious of. Obviously, it gets information from the liver and other stuff, but you're not conscious of that. You can't use this data. So then I said, okay, so if we add more senses, can we start thinking, creating, and feeling from places that we never did before? And we said, and then we decided to go and we founded Cyborgnest, and we thought, okay, but what will be a sense that will really have impact on the world that we live today? And we looked around and we saw that in the 20th century, everything that has to do with navigation, proximity, and orientation became such a huge pillar in our life because when if you were born 200 years ago in a village somewhere, you would go once in your lifetime to the big city, and that would have been it.
Right.
That's the movement. But today we move so much, maybe not today, but usually we move so much. We fly all over, we travel, we have meetings all over, and not only physically, but even in situations like today with COVID, there is, for example, so much data moving around us all the time that, flying all over. So then we said that probably a sense of orientation is something that will be really cool. Uh, yeah, so that's how everything started. That's my package.
That's how you came to this very complex crossroads that you find yourself at with both Cyborgnest and Sensei. I was just reflecting about how I grew up in Antwerp for about 4 years in my childhood. And you said you mentioned you had a son. I think you told me earlier before we started that he's 9 now. They talk about that time from 4 to 7 and maybe going a little on where the brain is just a sponge and takes in so much so powerfully at that age. And I spent my time in Antwerp. And I really feel like that's my home, even though I've lived in other places a lot longer. And so much was shaped in me, traveling all over Europe. Almost every weekend we were in a different country. And so it makes me think, with hearing your stories about Romania, is that when you first kind of explored the liberation from the human rights angle of helping to free others using this technology that was revealing hidden or ignored or suppressed stories to help bring change. And it seems to me now you've moved to an existential dimension where it's more about the kind of becoming of a person's individual creativity to better, or your work with Sensei with, again, over anxiety, or it's just exploring wellness. And I think that's a fascinating move because you're thinking about liberating the individual, but not fixing the individual. There's not a defect, but
Oh
rather
no, and that's
enable to an ability to kind of become. And I think that's often something not talked about when we think about technology. People are always talking about fixing something as opposed to releasing or expanding something that's already beautiful and already there.
Oh, you're actually touching a really important point because, you know, because the company is called Cyborgnest, and because we are here to enhance people with stuff. People are like, there are two things that I categorically disagree with. One is the obvious question that people ask us is, so are you trying to turn us all into robots, into
Right.
machines? And I'm like, it's exactly the opposite,
Right.
because if we are connected to the planet and to our environment more,
Mhm.
in the planet being our habitat, our natural place to be. So as far as I'm concerned, that just makes us more human, and doesn't make us to be machines. And then there is all the other, there are so many names for it: post-humanism, transhumanism, whatever, that some of them are like, no, things are fucked up, we need to change, it's wrong, we
Yeah.
need to be fixed,
Yeah.
we need to. And I'm like, there is nothing. I think that's a wrong approach, because it's not about fixing what's wrong. We are an amazing creature by itself. It's even hard to judge, because what would you compare it to? Like, are you better than this, or less than that? Even the little doggy that I live with. So I'm like, yeah, maybe I can read faster than her, but she can do so many things other better than me. So it's really hard to compare. So it's not about fixing anything. It's not about trying to compensate on a lack, but it's
Mhm.
just exploring and creating and thinking in different new ways. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think when you talk about enhancement, the maybe if you've watched a lot of, we love dystopian movies, we love things go wrong movies. Skynet takes over the world and it starts nuclear war, and we're enslaved for centuries. But so I'm curious about, as a creator, as a thinker in this space, about how much the kind of ethical dimension about this kind of approach, like, because if there can be enhancement, can't there then be control, like in the wrong hands, about
Yeah.
what people are kind of exposed to? And I'm just curious about that dialogue, because it seems that cutting edge technologies, whether it's the atomic bomb or atomic energy, there has that, and I don't know, that dark side in the wrong hands or for the wrong reasons. And I'm just curious how you navigate that in your work or your thoughts.
I think I, so I think that the basic line that we need to live by is no fear in when it comes to creativity, and to yeah, expanding ourselves, when obviously making mistakes, it's part of the journey, right? And
Mhm.
making mistakes as a person, as a family, as a community, as a country, or as a whole, like a existence as humans. But I think, and people love the romance of the talk of, oh, the world in the past was different, was better, whatever. And I'm like, what the hell are you guys talking about? We live in the best world ever. Because even if we go like very shortly backwards, you know what? I'll tell a story. I was once at a conference, and there was this. I was After I gave my talk, there was this panel, and the guy said, well, today we live a worse life than the caveman. And that at that stage, I got pissed, because what are you talking about, mate? Like, even if I go just 20 years backwards, in 1994 there was still apartheid in South Africa. In 1976 in Boston, women were not allowed to run a marathon. In I don't know, the poverty in the world in the beginning of the year 2000 was so much bigger than it is today. If we speak about diseases and other stuff. Sorry, cut that. If we speak about diseases and other stuff that are happening in the world, we have the ability to try at least and to deal with stuff. So we definitely live in an imperfect, that will never be perfect world, but better than it ever was up until now. I would not. I mean, I would like to be born or to be for a second or for a few days or a month, I don't know, 500 years ago, but I would definitely not want to be a slave 500 years ago, which
Yeah,
was 90% of the population in the world, right?
yeah.
Because, yeah,
Yeah, they say it'd be nice to go back 500 years if you could have dental care and penicillin.
exactly.
It brings back, and you read some of the medievalists, the medieval scholars, or even authors of medieval works, and they say, just the smells would drive and the sounds would drive us insane. Not to mention kind of
Of
the daily
course.
pains from what it could be a toothache or twisted ankle that can go on and on. But bringing up the past, I think I've read somewhere that people consider, you could argue that Galileo was the first cyborg because of the use of the telescope. So I'm curious if you see, if you're, it seems to me that there's two kind of schools where the work now, your product, Centero, the sensory enhancement device, do you see it as an extension of something human beings have been doing a long time? If you imagine, the caveman with the stick was kind of the first cyber going with the Galileo, or is there been a fundamental change, rupture with the computing power? Not even just the computer, but more with what's happened with the smartphone, I guess, and this insane ability to be hyperconnective and process just incredible amounts of information in a second. Do you see it as a trajectory or a kind of rupture and a newness? I'm just
No,
curious.
I think there is an amazing professor in the UK, a guy called Andy Clark, that he has a book that I recommend to everybody called Natural Born Cyborgs, uh, which I'm very much with him and other people like him, that looking at this whole idea of connecting with technology as a new thing. As far as I'm concerned, it's a complete mistake, because it's been proven, and Yuval Noah Harari speaks about it as well. There were a few human-like species when we developed, and the reason why we survived is because we adopted technology.
Mm-hmm.
Is and technology is not that they had a smartphone, but using a stick for hunting,
Right.
fire, later on the wheel or whatever. That is technology. And for them, and going back to your question, the power of computing, we are excited about that because that's what we live. But if you lived at the moment that I don't know, whatever, the bridge was invented,
Right.
and you are like, fucking hell, I can cross that place now. Do you believe that? Like,
Yeah.
that was such an amazing thing. And that's technology. That is why we are here. So humans, every human, we all have a very short kind of thinking span, let's say, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
think, we can't really think a lot forward, and when we think backwards, we think about our life plus a bit that we were taught at school about 50 years before that. So we look at all these. Yes, there was a smartphone, that there was a computer that became a laptop, became a smartphone, and now it's becoming closer to us. So suddenly we're like, whoa, 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 we need to speak about that, because all this merging with technology, maybe we are not interested. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that all the ethical questions, privacy questions, and everything around that is super relevant, that needs to be asked and needs to be super addressed. But the answer of if yes or not merging with technology, that is not a question. We merge with technology from our existence.
Right.
And if you imagine yourself a world where technology disappear. So we wake up tomorrow in the morning and we have to feed 8 billion people from what's going randomly on trees, and we have to warm up 8 billion people from I don't know from what, covering ourselves with leaves or hiding under a rock or whatever.
Mm,
We will die in a week. Like, so it's not a question of if, it's a matter of how we do the next step in the
mm,
proper way.
mhm,
And even after, we will think about it really carefully and we will make what we think is the right decisions. Mistakes will always be made and there will always be something to work on. And speaking of my son, I was trying to tell him yesterday that imperfect is the perfect way to live, because if everything was perfect, then what's the purpose? Like, I wake up in the morning and do I have a goal? Do I have something to fight for, to achieve, to do? I it will probably be pretty boring, pretty or less exciting than it is now. So we shouldn't be afraid of making steps forward. We shouldn't be afraid of falling. We shouldn't be afraid of all that. It's part of the fun and part of the journey.
yeah, it's interesting because Hegel writes, he has an interpretation of the Garden of Eden where he's not the only one, but it's just when one of them came to mind where the serpent is the hero because the serpent is the one that gets humanity to leave this kind of unconscious quote unquote perfection and then be able to start stumbling and make mistakes and learning and all of that process. But thinking about hope, I wanted to ask you because I think it's interesting where you are, what you're thinking about at this time, and then having a son, and how that affects maybe your work or what you're learning or anything really. Because you're kind of creating the future that he will live in more comfortably. And so I'm curious about maybe what you learn from your son, whether in an ethical sense or even in a practical sense. Maybe it takes your work in a certain way, or just as a creator in this really complex and important field, attached to a human kind of realizing it's our potential or our creativity that is inside in a way that seems to be your focus and what you want to do with your life. So I'm interested if you could talk a little bit about that, having a son and what that does to your creating or your thinking in this area.
Yeah, it's he's a big inspiration in my life. From first of all, I think that he kids put parents in uncomfortable positions all the time, and they are a mirror to who you are, and there is something so natural and not phony about them, that is scary, because most of your grown up friends will, you know they will try to be polite, they
Yeah,
be politically correct with you and
right.
all that and blah blah blah. But the kid, even when they are like very little, when you do something wrong, they immediately start crying, and then you are like, shit, I did something wrong.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way to hide it now. Nobody can be like, I can't just this, not make it be, just happen. So that's I think it's a great present that we get as parents, because it confronts you with yourself in a way. And also, I'm looking at him from another angle, and I'm looking at where he is at 9 years old and where I was at 9 years old, and trying to
Mm-hmm.
compare the two worlds that I grew up in and he grew
Mm-hmm.
up in. And he's 9 years old. He speaks two languages, learning the third. He plays on a very high level on at least two musical instruments, and he
Wow.
mumbles on another, probably three, four.
Wow.
He's creating, he's coding, he's whatever. And when I was 9 years old, I was picking my nose, and maybe I learned how to ride a bicycle or something like that. which is not a matter of better or
Right.
more or what's more important, because a kid that knows how to just ride a bicycle, it's an amazing kid as well. It's not, I don't want people to get me wrong, because it's not
Sure.
about quantifying stuff, but it does help you learn as a mirror again the world that we live in, and the place that we create in. And I think that as people we always have to adapt ourselves to these realities, and to try to be relevant, because that's how impact happens.
Yeah, I was thinking about when I was getting ready for our talk. I was thinking about when some people went to see Avatar,
Yeah.
and then there was a post Avatar depression because the Avatar world was so beautiful. They were like, why can't we live in a world with those colors and that? I just thought it was funny because it relates to the kind of world we're living in now, which seems, though it's hyper connected, we seem to be cut off. And we're having Zoom talks all over the world. But so I wanted to close with any advice about enhancement or any thoughts about getting through this strange period, how you stay inspired or creative in a time that is full of uncertainty and a disconnection and in some places physical lockdown. I mean, illnesses, economic hardship. Um,
Listen, um, um, our I see my existence, my physical existence, as a expression of the real life which happens inside here. So the real life is not the place where I am in now, the between my kitchen and my living room, or it's not the real reality of my life happens inside here, and that nobody can take from you ever. And that cannot happen. That is taken from you maybe when you die, although we have no idea what happens at that moment, right? But let's assume that it's a shut off button, and that's it, and you turn into a matter and go back to the ground. But until that happens, it's all here. So I think learning, it's the thing. Doesn't matter how free or not free you are, or how much you can walk on the streets or you cannot walk on the streets. Learning is the key in life for everything. And keep on learning, keep on exploring, keep on asking yourself questions, and your life will be as rich as it was out there, or wherever. Because we can look, for example, and I think it's not that I hate visual content, or because again I went studying cinema, so I do
right,
have some love for it, but I do find it really sad that people that spend hours and hours in watching TV, because that is basically a, a machine that was invented to live life instead of you,
right,
because it makes you sit there and have a feeling that you are doing something and you're living a life, but it's not really happening, right? You are
right,
watching someone else's life,
right,
and you're
right.
you're 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 not really experiencing stuff yourself. So my advice to everybody, doesn't matter COVID, not COVID, or whatever, grab a book, open the internet, ask a question, and find the answer to it. And then after you have the answer of it, try to do something with it, try to create something with it, and you will find that the physical boundaries of your own body, or your own home, or your own rules in the country that you are in some case are it's not that they are irrelevant, because yes, isolation has huge impact on mental well-being and all that, but it can be like the loss will not be as big as you think it is.
Well, that's a great place to leave it. It was beautifully said and definitely needs to be remembered. So thank you so much for not only saying it, but in the way that you said it. Very, very inspiring. And I want to thank you so much for your time, for delaying your dinner or second dinner, whatever the case may be for us. So really appreciate it. And for
Big
those,
pleasure.
yeah, and for those who, again, thanks for tuning in, everybody who's watching. And I will definitely link that book that you mentioned below, The Natural Born Cyborgs. Is
Yes.
any other, we do a lot of talk about books and living in this on this channel. Any other recommendations? A favorite book doesn't have to be in the field that
Oh,
you think
can I
someone
actually
can open?
recommend them? Can I
Yes,
actually recommend the movie?
of course. Yes.
So by mistake, I bumped into a new documentary that came out recently called My Octopus Teacher.
Oh yes,
And
yes. On Netflix. It's on Netflix now, I think.
yes,
Yeah.
and it's absolutely the most amazing movie ever on so many aspects, and it actually connects so much to some of the stuff that we spoke about because I don't want to spoil the movie, but you
Right.
see what's happening with that octopus and the abilities. It's not the normal nature movie where they explain you, yes, it can do this, it can do that, and it has whatever arms and all
Yeah.
that. But it's a real experience, and
Yeah.
you connect to that octopus in a way that you never connected to an animal that you never met. And when people think about enhancing ourselves, they should watch that movie and think and understand that enhancing ourselves doesn't mean to turn ourselves into robots, but means
Right.
to be more like nature and to learn from these abilities that animals or plants or whoever has have them and want to have them and want to be part of it, because being able to suddenly communicate with animals or with plants or even with ourselves in a new way, you know. So you mentioned Centero, and with Centero you have the ability to sense people's heartbeats, and when you face them on the planet. And one of the things that we are explaining, that is not just the idea of you sensing someone's heartbeat, but if I'm connected to you and I sense your heartbeat for the first time, the second time, the third time, I learn how your heartbeat feels, right? And then when suddenly your heartbeat is different, I'm like, okay, so the guy is doing something different now, right? So you suddenly I know something about you, although I didn't call you, I didn't ask you what you're doing, but I learned something about you in a new way, using biofeedback and using something that is natural and the new way of communicating. And then by you can make 1 plus 1 and say, ah, okay, so where he is now, it's night, so his heartbeat is slower because he's probably sleeping now. I strongly recommend to see this movie. It's yeah, it's a new thing, and yeah, just go for it. It's so fun.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that. There's been a couple of great books on octopus and learning and relationships. And what I find so inspiring, and there's so much of this conversation I really appreciated, but the words that come to mind are interconnection and expansion. And your, as you point out, ancient technology, ancient view of your view of ancient technology as enabling that and continuing to make us more human is a great message. So again, we've gone over the time limit. Hopefully, your family's not too hungry.
No worries, no worries.
Your son that you said at 9 years old is not impressed with ego or accomplishment. You know, he has other things to keep you grounded upon. So,
Well,
thank
he's
you.
actually waiting for me to have dinner, and then
Yeah.
we're gonna record some music. So
Oh,
yeah, I
that's
think he's
great. That's
excited
great.
about that.
Well,
Yeah.
thank Julian for me very much, and thank you very much. much. And everyone, please remember to subscribe. And Liviu, best of luck with everything. And thank you for the illuminating but much too short talk. Maybe we'll come on and build a discussion next around octopus and learning and expansion and creativity. I mean, at some
Let's
point.
do that.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for having me. It's been a big pleasure, and let's do it again.
Yes, please, please, anytime. Thank you so much, and stay safe, and best of luck. Enjoy your dinner.
Cheers. Thank you.